Yeah, so we were definitely speaking last week about the Charter of Rights, and we were at section 13.2 and speaking definitely um, about the the various rights. We had stopped last week at the right to freedom of movement, and I said how significant it was this week that we speak about 13.2G, which is the right to equality before the law.
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.
This is Mutabaruka. We want to present to you a wholesome kind of level of consciousness right now. So subscribe and tell your friend them. This is Mutabaruka.
This is so interesting because how the courts interpret equality before the law is going to determine whether or not you have this constitutional right is violated. So it speaks just so what it says, equality before the law. So there must be a law in place that is breached or violated for you to be able to access this right, or say that state organs or the state has, agents of the state has violated this particular law. So you have to ask yourself, or we have to appreciate that we want to know what is a law. So we know definitely outside of the Constitution, it is a law enacted by Parliament and goes through the Senate, and once it is approved, the Governor General, Rattigan's favorite friend, will put his rubber stamp, similar to how they had amended the Constitution to allow for extended period for persons who ought to be retired to continue on in perpetuity.
One of your favorite friends?
My favorite, always. Gotta love them. Tricks are for kids. All right, so because of that, now we look and we say, is this law in place? So once the law is in existence and they are using the law not for all but for one, then you can scream that there is no equality before the law. For instance, let's say you're an ordinary Jamaican and you're suspected of a crime, and the police come and haul you out, put your name in the paper, show you medical records to make sure you look like a bad person, and your picture is shown, and then you're arrested and you don't get bail, and then juxtapose that with a politician, maybe 6 of them, who are in unjustified enrichment or whatever, and if it's corruption and they have the evidence but they can't put their names out, or they don't tell you who they are because they have to protect their reputation. You can see clearly how the law operates in terms of due process of the law, is that they use one set of people get a certain respect, and the law operates how it ought to operate for them, but not for the ordinary citizen. Then you can show in your section 19 constitutional claim that there is no equality before the law when dealing with you being suspected of a crime, the manner in which you're arrested and the manner in which your information is put out to the public, for there to be a public trial against you, as opposed to the class of people who are protected. So the key thing is there must be a law, and you are not afforded protection under that law, or the law didn't apply to you by the state actor, and based on that you're saying that you have a right to equality before the law, and they ought to have given you that benefit, that constitutional right. That is how equality before the law works. A lot of times you find yourself before the court saying that you feel you weren't treated properly, and so they breach your equality before the law, and then the court says, listen, there is no law. And policies are not laws, because of the manner in which it is enacted, and the court is very pedantic in terms of interpreting what a law is, and very exacting. So a lot of times when we have laws and we hear about subsidiary, the minister goes out and he makes his regulations, and then he affords his executive to make policies. kind of like how they do the policy thing in schools, where we, even up to now, our Ministry of Education hasn't come out with a policy that says, hey, a clear mandate that you can wear your dreadlocks, you can wear your afro, you can be black and show up to school to be educated. It's not in a written law, and the policy in and of itself has no teeth when it comes to equality before the law. There's not much the court will likely do when it comes to that aspect of it. So just appreciate that aspect of it. So that is called 13(2)G, the right to equality before the law. Two words that are always being used interchangeably, but they're completely different, is equity and equality. Well, the Constitution makes provisions for these two. So while 13(3)G has equality before the law, H now starts to talk about equitable treatment, and you can appreciate that it is a completely different mechanism. So the right at H speaks about the right to equitable and humane treatment by any public authority in the exercise of any function. Well, it speaks for itself. Equity is not necessarily equality, but to make sure that there are provisions so that you are treated in such a way that your human rights are recognized. So equity would suggest that if you are a young person who happens to be disabled, that when you pass for the requisite high school, equity in the law would mean that they would have in place ramps and things to accommodate you so that you can learn like your peers, notwithstanding your disability. Outside of a disability legislation, the Constitution makes sure that there is equitable and humane treatment. And minority groups oftentimes suffer from the inequitable treatment. And so when you think of persons who might not be able to pay their school fees and need assistance, well, that's the aspect of equity that you want that equitable treatment to come in. Now, also, it also has an aspect of equal treatment coming into it, so much so that if you're in a school, girls at the school, similar situated, same age, same features, same similarities, are in the school, a teacher is not supposed to treat you any different. Or if you're in a workplace, you're expected to be treated in the same manner, notwithstanding that you come from country, or you come from, in the Jamaican space, you come from the ghetto. They're still supposed to treat you with the same amount of respect. How the courts interpret the equitable aspect is one that I don't even want to use the word criticize, but it's an interesting aspect, because they still are saying that you're required to have a comparator. The comparator aspect, I'm going to tell you what it means, because it triggers almost as if it emasculates the right in and of itself. Now imagine, I'm using myself, entering into a space and I'm saying, but I don't think I'm being treated like my peers. The court is going to say, well, you're going to have to find a Rasta man who is also a lawyer, who happens to be of similar circumstances like you, and he's being treated okay as opposed to you, rather than the general framework that it's just a male who is not being treated equally, or with the equitable overtures. So because of that, once again, even this right is one where I think it although it's in the Constitution, it doesn't have the necessary teeth that it needs to have. And those two, G and H, are two of the big rights that I think, in terms of how it is there for your protection, it's not being utilized the way that it should. And certainly lawyers would have to do a little bit more work to ensure that they set out the breach, so that it's so clear that the aspect of even before you get to the demonstrable justifiable aspect, from the the state actors' standpoint is a little bit, the hurdle is a little bit too high for the spirit of the Constitution. That's just my critique on how that works. But those are two big things: equality before the law, there must be a law, and then the equitable and humane treatment by public authority in the exercise of any function. So when you see how the JCF treats the citizen when they engage them, remember the professionals are supposed to be the JCF. Although the citizen is so to have respect, the lack of respect is not an open invitation to abuses, to being kicked in the chest, hit with the bat, up in the truck back, especially in situations like which when we speak of these two, G and H, you can appreciate why they love to call states of emergencies, because they need to suspend the rights so that they can abuse you, because you are cloaked in these protections. But your state actors are supposed to always treat you as you are a human being, even if you forfeit your freedom. So you find yourself in prison, you're still a human being. And the minute that is taken from you, we gone into areas as to the mystery of why crime is so high. So keep that in mind. Now, the beauty of our Constitution, and I think let me retract the word beauty, because I'm speaking about the art and the language, and I don't want it to be misinterpreted. But our drafters would have put a lot of consideration into this document. As I often say, I don't know if they really had the intention to give us these kinds of protections, but albeit it was done, and it is a blessing. So it's ironic that they're now trying to correct the massive protections that they gave us, and that should be the concern of the citizen. But at 13.2i is the right to freedom from discrimination, and it sets out the grounds clearly, it lists them. So if it's not there, you can't cry discrimination. So it says the grounds of being male or female. Before I even get to the other ones, how do we interpret male or female in the modern dispensation is a debate that it will go very, very. Google hear me say it, and it's researching it. But yeah, being male or female is, our Constitution just says, listen, that is the basis of discrimination. It doesn't even have the word gender in there. So it was very progressive in terms of perspective in its language. And then the second aspect of it is race, place of origin, social class, which is important. We have a class system in Jamaica. Color, because we know we're not talking about black and white. People who brown feel say them better than the people who middle brown, and then the people them who dark skin. So we have a color issue that even though we call it race, is a little bit more technical. Our Constitution literally says color, and we must not miss the importance of language. So I repeat them again. It has race, place of origin, social class, and then it goes on, and says color. So it's clear, different from your race, that we have the mixed races, but the color of your skin is going to be discrimination rises from that. And then it speaks about religion or political opinions. So the protection of discrimination is so important. Somebody on my TikTok has said something about disability. I often wonder if social class can cover the disability, because I don't know how we miss that. The protection of the disabled, and then we do not have a working legislation that protects that. But albeit this is our reality, I think what currently is there, especially that this document was drafted in 2011, some 12 years ago, is the thought of last week Rattigan spoke about the report saying and he mentioned that race was a factor, and was shocked. And people in the comments were saying the United States have their own racial issues, but in an island so small, with a motto out of many one, and when you open your door and you go on the road, you're seeing predominantly black. To even conceive that race is a factor, just appreciate that outside of social class, colorism is one of the biggest discrimination tools. Even before you address, because you could have come from the uppest top of town, the color of your skin will diminish the level of respect that you get, which is why people are so politically hungry for power and want to hold on to it, and why corruption reigns in those spaces. Now, there's no questions for me on this particular one. I just need you to know that discrimination is real. Culturally, how we respond to discrimination, it has a lot of post-traumatic stress disorders in it, and so while it's happening in the moment, we might not recognize it, but it does account for a lot of the stagnation in our spaces. And even as you're in the diaspora, you experience it, and it oftentimes these days it don't even come from white people anymore. It comes from other races similar situated who need to feel better about themselves, and they kind of throw it on you and then give you language like, but you're not like them, you're so different. But at the end of the day, any Jamaican represents all Jamaicans. So the video that was shown earlier when the professor told the young lady to get out, and the key thing from that aspect where that discrimination was displayed is that oftentimes we don't speak up because it's abuse, and we are mentally triggered and traumatized when we see things like this happen, and we often don't have a response for it. But you have to be on your toes, because today for you, tomorrow for me. So what you allow to happen to me today opens the doors for similar things to happen to you. Now, the right of everyone to, this is important, protection from search of the person and property, respect for and protection of private and family life and privacy of the home, and then protection of privacy of other property and of communication. Listen, you saw Herb just now showed your signal, and it's so funny because you have to move from the WhatsApp, which they promised you was encrypted and protected, but you have to move over to Signal because your privacy is eroded every single day. We had an entire situation in relation to when NIDS was coming out, and that legislation was passed, and the protection of your privacy rights, your biodata, your identity being put in the space. And it's so ironic because you just heard Ratigan spoke about what happened to Corporal James and how his information, his HR information was made in the public space. So you can imagine how horrified people are knowing that you go to your doctor, he sends you to the health center, you do the test that they tell you to do, and you're off on your way, and you think because the Constitution provides you with the right to your protection of your privacy, your family life, all of those things are interconnected, because your information when out in the public, it's a breach to your entire what is in your home. And so the right is actually so much more encompassing than it originally was. And I just think that it's one of the most revolutionary rights, and notwithstanding it's breached every single day. When the questions people ask, I get the calls every day, sometimes hours of the night, people coming from dance, and the first thing I hear is, Mr. Isat, the police want me open my phone. Him say me must open my phone. Should I open my phone? The answer to that is no. Your privacy is your privacy, and it's not only an uptown person who married to a prominent person can tell the courts and everybody, I'm not opening my phone, even if my son is dead. Everybody has that right to not, you're not supposed to open your phone, and they're not supposed to breach that right. And they must get orders from the court to do so. And simply the JCF does not have the power to tell you that you are to open your phone. And there are people are saying, yeah, but if you're not, do not open it. But you need to understand how important privacy rights are. You need to understand. I can tell you this, when I was young, my grandmother, both of them, both my grandparents are passed. If I tell you I know what them bathroom look like, is lie I tell you. So I'm saying that there were spaces that even in a house you were not allowed to go, and that's the importance of privacy, and respecting it also is of great import. So that's your 13.3J is your privacy rights, and it is threefold. I'm just going to repeat it so you have an idea.
Isat, I just have one question and then the floor is yours again. Is there age discrimination in the Constitution?
No, that's it. They made sure that's not there, and I set it out to speak that to make it clear that the key thing about our Constitution, which is, I'm glad that you asked that question, because a lot of people felt that the conversation about raising the age and all of these things, it was not in the Constitution. The Constitution, in fact, is in tandem with modern understanding in terms of political ideas. As I said, this is the most revolutionary Charter of Rights, and it specifically it remove, like if you look at other constitutions, they have the word gender, they have age. Our Constitution specifically goes being discrimination on the ground of, so you have a right to freedom from discrimination on the grounds of being male or female. So the gender argument's not there. The age argument is not there, because it says race, place of origin, social class, color, religion, or political opinions. Now, I know one and two lawyers that will say, well, a social class is age, and try fit it. And that's a matter of interpretation. But the clear language of age is not there, because our Constitution is not, it's very high on protecting child rights, because it recognizes that children are the future. And as I said, it goes down, it speaks about discrimination on these things, then it speaks about your right to privacy, and then it goes right after privacy and family life and all of those things. It goes straight to the rights of every child. But I'm just making it clear that age discrimination, even disability discrimination, is not found in the Constitution. Okay. And so legislation is where it would have to pick up the shortfall for those. But we do recognize that on the basis of discrimination, that race and even colorism, I highlight it because it's so important. Because we oftentimes make the excuse, because we think that racism is a definitive by when you click those boxes on those forms, whether you're white, whether you're black, whether you're Asian, whether you're, the confusion with race. But to recognize that colorism is a form of racism. And we are affected by it, and you just gave that aspect of it. But the next thing, which is happening on the heels of Monday morning coming, and the rights of the child, when this is about access to education now. So every child has the right to such measures of protection as are required by virtue of the status of being a minor or as part of the family, society, and the state. So all of these rights are encompassed and put together to say under KI, or the K1I, it makes it clear that the protection is required by virtue of status of being a minor. So the laws that protect children, just by virtue of being a minor, you must appreciate how important it is to protect the child. And the protection of the child is not only limited to the parents. It is a community duty that I think as Jamaicans we are falling short. Now, where the government is concerned, the child who is a citizen of Jamaica is afforded publicly funded tuition in a public education institution at the pre-primary and primary levels. So certainly right up to GSAT, PEP, whatever they're doing, PEP, yeah, they're doing PEP right now. Primary school level, everything is supposed to be free. It's publicly funded. So all this madness that you're hearing about, we no longer providing books for grade 1 to 3 and this and that. And I have seen the book list and my heart goes out to those parents. You have one, much less 2 or 3 that you're going to provide. The book list is coming in at an average of $50,000 for free education. Appreciate that your right is being violated. And if you take it to the court, people is going to be vexed with you. And you're going to hear the public space start to tell you, say, you should have keep your legs locked. You shouldn't have so much pick-me. But the government is responsible. So as you are doing your family planning, certainly where education is concerned, it's supposed to be free right up until, when you get to high school and the child takes their PEP and you know who bright and who don't. That is, you have at least 10 to 13 years that you can plan to make the best of what you're doing with your children. But the government has that responsibility. And all of this nonsense that you say talk about you're sending home kids because them here don't come and them uniform too short and all of that. It's a breach of the Constitution. And when you take it up, everybody is upset. But I take it up nonetheless. I like when they're upset. But anyway, so that is 13K to double I. Right. So this right is so important. Coming in Monday morning is a matter for you to see whether or not your Minister of Education or Minister of Education in the Jamaican space is aware of this constitutional right. And even with the influx of teachers and everybody not being at school and all of that, it should not affect the right to access to the publicly funded tuition in a public educational institution at the pre-primary and primary levels. At least up to that point. So that is key. Now, the Constitution then moves on to the right to enjoy a healthy and productive environment, free from the threat of injury or damage from environmental abuse and degradation of the ecological heritage. Well, we have these backside conversations all day. And we talk about carbon rights. We talk about so many things. We see what the Chief Corey and the Maroons asserting their rights, and people in the Clarendon area and Rio Cobre having problems with their environment, and how that is being tackled, or the response by the government versus the amount of actions before the court, because your environment is a part of the very first right that we spoke about, which was the right to life and liberty. These are overlapping rights that you need to understand, that if your environment is not, if your environment is tampered with, if the environment is damaged or injured, it affects your rights, it affects your health, and in turn it affects your life. So the Constitution actually has a section that speaks about environmental rights, and even in this thing about global warming, and to respond again, when you hear that we are a hungry nation, it simply means that our environment is changed in such a way that I guess that's why perennial larceny is so high. So everything overlaps, but I just want you to appreciate that environmental rights are protected under this Constitution, and it is something to look at, because we only think that it's crime and violence is the only thing that is affecting our country that's supposed to be a developing country, but there's not much development for the people, and we're waiting for that to be addressed. Just know that your environment is important, and that there is a right, and if you feel it's being threatened, you can scream a Section 19 violation, and the court has to address it. We're now at some of these rights here's the joke about it now. Some of us won't get to it in our lifetime, but we hope that we do. So so you never hear in the social space anybody talking about the following rights. So it says the right of every citizen of Jamaica who is qualified to be registered as an elector for elections to the House of Representatives to be so registered, and who is so registered to vote in free and fair elections. There's actually that right. And so there's no criteria, provided that you're a Jamaican citizen. You can put yourself up to the to have ambitions to be a part of the 63 elite, um, six of which are suspected of wrongdoing at the moment. So you have the right to put yourself up to be one of those six, so nobody can call your name and let them, and your privacy rights are protected when you are corrupted. You see where I'm going? It's a right for everybody, so you don't have to be a member of any party. You can put up yourself as an independent candidate, or you can just exercise your right to vote. It's very important, because if you don't vote, you shouldn't complain. That is one big fact. And if you feel like there's nobody to vote for, put yourself out there. Be a gadfly to the process. Be on the ballot. Meet all of the criteria and put yourself up. Get your one vote and be proud, like Rowan Chung or whatever his name was. Do that. It is your right, your constitutional right to do so. So at end, it says the right of every citizen of Jamaica to be granted a passport and not to be denied or deprived thereof, except by due process of law. So not speaking to diaspora, because we don't have passport and visa and foreign and green card and all of that. But the common man, one of the things that I always ensure that I do is to enlighten young people, especially, or people that I come across. There are things that you're supposed to have your passport. It is a form of ID. It's not just the voter's ID or the national ID. The passport is one. And if you people around you must give you assistance to have that book, because it is your constitutional right to have it. And a lot of times when you don't have it, somebody else already take out one in your name, trying to enter the promised lands of Canada, England, and America using your identity. So you don't take it for granted that you're supposed to exercise it and use it. So I'm just putting that out there. And as I said, these are rights that it is there and nobody talks about them. Nobody know that it is your right to have a passport. And that's why they go down to the PICA office and feel like it's a privilege to have it. But they're supposed to be sending it to you once you pay for it. It's that, and credit to the government, they have put things in place to make it very easy for you to get access to your passport. So nobody is depriving you of your freedom of movement across the Caribbean and spaces in the world where you can go by direct flight, where visas are not required, but you have to have a passport to do that. So I'm just putting that out there. It's your constitutional right. A next one that is important, because it again goes to our space, because Ratigan just spoke about, you said South Africa, where they went in, 18 people died. I hope that would never happen in the Jamaican space, because when you said it, I said, but look at me getting up one Saturday morning, say I'm going down to whichever parish, Westmoreland, and I hear say I'm one of the 18 people in a house from a raid operation, and the investigation never ever. I have no confidence in Indicom. I will say that. So that investigation would just go belly up, and innocent people's lives would be lost. But that being said, the Constitution at O says you have the right to protection from torture or inhuman, and you have the right to protection from torture or inhuman or degrading punishment or other treatment as provided in subsection 6 and 7. So this is important, because a lot of time, like I said, that's why they call it human rights, is that you have those rights. And a lot of times the inhuman treatment is meted out against you. I'm not going to use this platform to make my usual complaints about the prison system But sending somebody's child to prison in the prison conditions that we have, it is actually inhumane treatment. And it is also degrading punishment. A day in any one of these jails or in the prison system is degrading punishment and inhumane. And I'll just leave it at that. Then at P, we have the person as provided for in section 14. Now, I want to understand that the freedom of a person is so important, because if you as a person, if you are feeling restricted and you're not under bail conditions, from whether it be a movement, whether it be how you operate in your work environment, how you operate in your family life, if you are being restricted, you're not being a human being, you're not being a person. Poverty is one of the biggest markers of a breach of this right. So if government is not taking steps to eradicate poverty, and I hear Rattigan said this morning, big up to the shrinking middle class and the expanding poor class, that's an indication of a breach of the right of freedom of the person. Because if you're in poverty, you're not free. And I'm not going to take on the Christian concept that, oh, you have Jesus, so you're free and you're all right. No. Your freedom of health, your right to life, your liberty is affected by poverty. And so this right that nobody talks about and expanded section 14 that we'll deal with another time, I just wanted to appreciate that your freedom of the person is affected by the poverty conditions that certainly the government has taken no steps to eradicate in the last couple of years. And governments and administrations before it are not just singling out this government, but the words of your prime minister is saying he's not focused on elections because he's now trying to improve the lives of he's now getting to the people. So he wasn't doing it before. So it's by his words. And I'm saying that this freedom of the person is completely affected by poverty. And I say that with no apology. Now, the protection of property rights as provided in section 15. You have to have property for you to be able to even say you have the right to protect it. But these are they are there, and it's not until you have property and with the rights come the obligations that this right is triggered. But the property is certainly you have a right to defend your property and to protect it, and the law is supposed to protect you as a property owner. Yeah. So that somebody said socialism like North Korea will end poverty. Boy, if that is the democracy is should always be protected. And if I see remnants of our state going into that authoritarian regime, I would not want to wake up and live in a place where my freedom of expression is bridled. My as much as I criticize Jamaica, one of the beautiful things about being a Jamaican and being in the Jamaican space is the empowerment that this very constitution that I'm speaking about gives as the government. I would not want to be in no other space where I'm not allowed to express myself, especially in the manner that I do it. And shout outs to people who also express themselves and are not happy with the way I express myself, because you are just demonstrating the spirit of the Constitution, and that's where I get my authority from. This one now are the right to due process as provided in section 16. Due process is so important, and we'll deal with section 16 when we expand speaking about due process rights. But you see where the charter speaks about the right to due process is the most important. Like this right is engaged every single day. And when we speak about due process, it's breached so much that when you speak about it, people vex. Do people think it's okay when your presumption of innocence to be in public spaces and because they have keyboards, they're they are very disrespectful and convicting people before they get their opportunity to go through the court system. And it's just it's the wrong approach, and it's the lack of understanding of the constitutional protection in the name of public bullying that causes the due process rights to always be breached. And if even the JCF and the JDF and your public officials respected the Constitution and due process, they would never embark on a daily basis to breach these rights of so many ordinary citizens. And that is what is important. And believe me, the due process is afforded to one set of people. I'm seeing it in the comments, but I'm not going to take it on. I'm glad it's there for people to read. But when the planter class continues to run the country the way that it does, then that man will always be living in slavery conditions, whether they feel it or not. And we see why the vagrancy laws remain relevant, because police are still pulling up in certain ghetto areas and mistreating youths who they just deem violence contributors, and that's another thing. But due process is a key thing. Now, we speak about this. You have the freedom for your belief, thoughts, ideas, protection of religion. It comes all the time. But right again, here at S, it speaks about the right to freedom of religion as provided for in section 17. So you are free to have your religion, participate in your religion, even if, let me say, and I'm gonna go far as saying this, even if you want to worship a yamed or a yam, and that is your religion, it is your right, and the court will have to respect it. You can send your child to school and say we worship yam, and they have to respect that. That is what religion does. Even though we have the churches running across every 5 houses a church in the Jamaican space, and it is predominantly Christian. There are other religions, and however people anchor their belief system on God, the Constitution protects them from it. And so for this week, that's where I stop. So the letter rights, we have completed them, and as you go and you reflect, when I come back and we start to talk about the other rights in detail in terms of the due process and speaking about how the state of emergency operates and section 14 and how the court is defined and how the separation of powers work and why Rattigan is able to sue his favorite person, and why the court has to entertain them because it is his right to do so, and that the media, even if she goes to the media and say it's foolishness, she's free to talk, because the Baroness already said at the end of the day, you're free to chat. It will be chat and nothing more, but that is it.
Look, I want to thank Isat
Yes.
for that outstanding presentation, and he's made us wiser by listening to him and walking through the Constitution with us.
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.